Chapter 10 Christmas. With Christmas, you could tell it was coming. You could feel it in a brisker north wind, which seemed to blow away what early stuffiness was around. You could feel it other ways too, not only physically but spiritually. You felt gayer, purer, kinder. But most of all, you could see it in flowers, some of which appeared only then, and in painted houses and yards dressed up with whitewashed garden stones, and in the shops which sparkled with the season's trappings. You could see it on our river bottom shop, in melly colored balloons and in hams hanging behind them, in cheese, in little girls and boys coming there to buy icing sugar and vanilla and rose water for their mother's Christmas baking, in boys bringing small parcels of ginger and going away sparkle eyed, counting their windfall, in so many things, in people buying gifts. And what a Christmas we had! Christmas Eve was for the shoppers. The day would be for us. Many people were still buying from us in secrecy because they were afraid to invoke Jake's wrath, but some were doing so openly. Some half and half, meaning they weighed the transaction carefully and bought from either Jake's emporiums or from us, wherever they could score an advantage. But we were doing a thriving business, a firecracking Christmas business. Respect is a big thing. Father had been reduced. He was operating from a diminished status, but he was respected at last. How much was this, Mr. Johnson? Merry Christmas, Mr. Johnson. God bless you, Mr. Johnson. My head swam. Little boys exploded their firecrackers, hollering, Christmas! And nobody minded the noise. The acrid burnt powder floated in through the open window and tickled our nostrils, but there was not a soul who minded. And cap guns going pop, pop, pop. Balloons were bought, recklessly blown up, and burst on the spot. Nobody cared. It did it did not deter the happiness. They just spluttered in wholesome white-teeth glee. Chatter, laughter, harmonica music, such a happy night. Somebody who was playing a guitar was coming down the road. Our busy fingers picked things off the shelves or unhooked hams which dangled from the ceiling on wires. Money changing hands, change clinking. We had made Donna Ray our cashier. Don't believe that country women are coarse. Some of them are the prettiest angels. Pretty? Well, not that. Maybe big-eyed or full-mouthed, some of them, but beautiful. Because if you take features that are above or below normal, they can work both ways, making a body ugly or beautiful. Some of those women were beautiful. Take me. I shall mention no names, but I saw some of the beauts of the village there in our shop that night, washed, brushed, and organdied, buying from us, buying and smiling and giving father the eye. They checked off their items as they bought, and they giggled most of the time. They were pleased with our wares and happy for us. I can't remember having heard so many happy Christmases before in one small place. I was amazed at how much I had missed in my early life, having lived so far away from these earthly people. They smiled at father. They were happy for him. He had licked the feet, and that is something which people of all creeds respect. If you lie down and die, then people will be so happy to walk all over you or kick you one. But stand up and heave, and they'll not only give you a hurrah, but a helping hand as well. I had a feeling that they were even overbuying from us. A ragtag fife rumba box and guitar band had formed in our yard, giving a mini impromptu concert of folk songs. The music stirred me up pretty badly, and when they began to play Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, it rammed the Christmas spirit deep down into me, so much of it that it made me ejaculate, Father, you've done it! We, son, he said, not me alone. And when he said it, he looked at Mrs. Hilcher. I knew he was going to marry her. Whoever was there and saw how he looked at her and heard him too, knew that it was only a matter of time he would do it. At about midnight, the last of the people drifted away. We had made a mint of money. Father counted it carefully and salted it away in a strong box which he had hid under the floorboards of my bedroom. The first time I had seen him do it and I had asked questions, he had explained thus: Remy, a man should try to outthink the others. If a thief breaks in here, looking for money, in whose room does he look? Why, yours. But it won't be there. It'll be here, and he'll never think so. I marvel at his logic. Yet, he went on, it's not too wise to baffle him completely. Leave him a little pickings. So, and he had made left a few bills around his room. How could a man like my father have been a dupe for so long when he was so smart? Jolted, he had at last begun to use his intelligence. We locked the place up without having planned to go anywhere, but nobody wanted to sleep, so father suggested, why didn't we go up to the village? All of us? Mrs. Hilcher asked. Why not? I said. Father looked at me, smiled, shook his head. Yes, Betty, he said. Couldn't you use a bit of Jake Hibbertson air? Don't say that, son, she said rebukingly. He don't own no permanent thing around here. I was happy to hear that. No permanent thing, eh? She was dead right, too. We went. The night was dark, but the rising moon was silvering the skyline. Fireflies tunneled about in the darkness. The air was brisk. Donna Ray pulled her sweater closer around her. She and I walked abreast behind father and her mother. Some hilarity from the village floated down to us. Father was talking in a lively fashion to Mrs. Hilcher. Do you think they're going to marry? I asked Donna Ray. Who? You know very well who. Well, she said, how? I don't know. I guess so. Yes, I think they will. Just like any other girl, hemming and hawing. I think so too. Would you? Would I what? Marry. Your dad? No, silly. Girls, girls, girls. I changed the subject. There were people still in the square, but the crowd must have thinned considerably because of the late hour. The air smelled strongly of spent firecracker powder. Father put a pound note in my hand and said to Donna Ray at the same time, Miss, as a rule, I hate giving money, raw money that is, to a lady. So I'll give it to Remy. Remy, he said, looking at me, why don't you buy your girl something? Donna's eyes nearly popped from her head. She blushed 100-volt blush but smiled, glancing at me, and just as quickly shifted her eyes somewhere else. Father and Mrs. Hilcher laughed, and I saw her touch his ribs with her elbow. Father had said it. My God, he had said it. My girl, Donna Ray. Putting his hand on Mrs. Hilcher's arm and tugging it, he said, Come, Betty. We worked hard tonight. I'll buy you a nightcap in one of Jake's bars. They went off into the crowd, and I felt as though I was on Old Smoky, whatever that is. Well, he had said that I should treat my girl to something special, so I went about treating. I wanted to buy her every conceivable eatable and drinkable thing, but she didn't want much. What was a soda pop, and a stripped candy, and a box of popcorn? So I spent a bit lavishly on a box of chocolates and some large balloons, although she was grown beyond the balloon age. And while she stood speaking with Jamie Evers, I sneaked off and bought a whole battery of firecrackers and a box of matches. We were still in the square when the Jaguar car pulled up. Jake got out quite nimbly. For every good reason, my heart began to pound. He walked unhurriedly into the emporium, greeting the people, shaking hands with them, though in the gaslight you could see that with all his Merry Christmasing, his face remained as tight as that of a drum. The man's mouth knew how to laugh, but not his eyes or any other part of his face for that matter. I sneaked behind him, not making myself too conspicuous, and when I saw that he meant to enter the bar, I looked in from the roadside door. When he saw father, he stopped dead in his track. Then he smiled, or so it seemed, and said, Well, if it isn't Merton. Yes, Jake Merton. The bar fell silent. Drinks were forgotten midway between tables and mouths. Long time no see, Merton, he said, holding out his hand. Father took it. Merry Christmas, Jake. Having a drink with us? He looked at Mrs. Hilcher, hesitated. She took the hint, saying as she rose to her feet, I'll be outside, son. Thanks for the drink. She made a bow to Jake and stepped only once. Without taking his eye from Jake, Father reached out and held her by the arm and pulled her back. I invited you, he said in an almost gravely voice, and Mr. Hibbertson hasn't dismissed you, have you now, Jake? Jake smiled nervously, then shifted his feet and looked at the others in the bar. No, he said. Why no? Then grab a chair, Father said. He did. He was uneasy, but the rest of the bar was the opposite. They began to remember that they had drinks in their hands. Father had played it right. Satisfied, I ran back and joined Donna Ray. What happened? She said anxiously. Happened? I said nothing. Why, Donna Ray? I am surprised at you. I thought, well, nothing happened. On our way back, Donna Ray and I popped some of our firecrackers in the most hearty of Christmas fashions, and we had the entire river bottom to ourselves, too. Christmas Day was even better. It was for us. Early in the morning, before it was quite day, I rode Marble to Robin Hill with our presents, mine and Father's. For Ma, I had bought a lovely pair of slippers. For Arlene, a boxed comb and a brush set, for she had begun to notice her beauty, and for Brad, a battery-powered toy luxury car. To my knowledge, nothing could possibly please him more than a good toy car screaming around the floor. Father sent Arlene a sweater and Brad a shirt and tie. The morning was simply bewitching, with the splattered stars twinkling their last and the air crisp and fresh and tingly. A light wind swept through the trees, rattling the leaves and making of the former gigantic maracas. Firecrackers burst sporadically in the village, and I could hear the youthful voices punctuating the burst with Christmas. The houses were lit. Nobody had slept, or if they had, they were up again. You heard talking, you felt life surging at you from everywhere, and you got a dose of humanity in its finest form. As if tired of an entire year of hate and greed, everybody was resting now, abiding in peace and even in love. I knew then that Christmas is Armistice Day for humanity. The skyline was clearing. I was at Robin Hill. Oh, it's you, Remy, Ma said when she opened the door. She was dressed in a gown of rich material. I went in just this once. It was Christmas, wasn't it? She hugged and kissed me on the cheek and pushed me back to look me in the eyes, and she was smiling so nicely, all mother and all love. Merry Christmas, Remy, she said. I hugged her again and reciprocated. Merry Christmas, Ma. Merry Christmas. I'm so happy that you've come. Wearing nightgown and pajamas respectively, Arlene and Brad joined us in the living room. I kissed her and hugged Brad, and our exchange of the Christmas spirit was proper and copious. Arlene and Brad would have ripped their presents open there and then, but Ma said, oh, under the tree with them. They had a tree in a corner of the living room, and its underside was littered with the most splendid array of Christmas packages I had ever seen. Jake had splurged. Unlike ours, they were bare-boned, a pretty Christmas sight. For an instant, I was embarrassed by our inferior wrapping, but I bounced back quickly. What was in a wrapping? Arlene and Brad reluctantly added the presents to the litter. When, Ma? When will we open them? Brad fussed. Any time now, son. Any time now would be soon, so Brad was a bit happier. I was looking at the other decorations in their house, the string of Christmas cards they had sent us, one and we one to them. When Jake, wearing a gown over his pajamas, walked into the room, he was looking tipsy. Merry Christmas, young man, he said. We shook hands. Merry Christmas, sir. I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't shy. I was up to his ears in height, yet I didn't look him in the eye. It was a dawning outside. It was that early that I had started out, but having known the customs of our home, I had come early. The punch is ready, Debbie, Jake said to Ma. Some punch, young man, he said to me. I looked at Ma. Of course, she said. We went into the dining room, and there it was, the big bowl of it, rich, foamy egg punch. Any Christmas morning without it was about shot. The glasses were already arranged in the right places, and Big Daddy Jake filled them up, and we took them as he did. Merry Christmas, everybody, he said, and we all tilted back our heads and drank in steady, deep draughts. Every one of us was left mouth statued. Ma said, Don't leave without your presents. Mine? What do you mean, Remy Johnson? She said, wide eyed. Of course yours. Why don't you just stay and have Christmas breakfast with us? We'd love it, eh, Arlene? Brad. She looked at Jake. Eh, Jake? Sure, he said. Why don't you stay, young man? Young man, young man. Didn't he know my blinking name? Yet their breakfast was floating in on a powerful wavelength. Bacon or ham and eggs, cinnamon scented chocolate. Will you? Ma asked. No, I said. I have to go back to my house. Oh, Ma said, darkening. Jake poured a second helping of punch and we drank that too. Then, with his glass still in his hand, he ambled off somewhere. Ma was big. I asked, When are you going to have your baby? Any time now, Remy. Arlene and Brad also wandered off to the living room, no doubt to admire the glorious spread of presents. Ma looked around before she said, How's your father? All right, Ma. Very okay. So I've been hearing, she murmured. I wondered, did she still like him? A little. I'd better be going, Ma, I said. God bless you, Remy. Good luck with your baby. God bless you, son, she said and squeezed my arm. Her eyes were moist and there was a tremor in her voice. She walked away. Don't forget the presents, she said. I took them home, all three of them. The sun was coming up and glinting in the dewy grass in 1,000 places. The entire countryside looked so peaceful and amiable. A silky swat of fog hung in the river bottom, and it seemed it would take quite a bit of sun to remove it. A few firecrackers shattered the silence, but it was nothing to disturb the larger peace that had nothing to do with sound whatsoever. It was Christmas morning. Father had the punch ready, frothy, rich. It was silkily sweet. Drinking deep, I drank again. After having had 2 glasses at Robin Hill, it was a wonder of why my belly muscles didn't snap. We decided that family came first, so we opened what came from Robin Hill and what father and I had given each other. Arlene gave him a box of handkerchiefs with his initials embroidered on, while from Brad he received a striped necktie which had an expensive touch to it. Father fussed over them, and rightly so. From Arlene, I received a heavy studded belt, just the thing to go with my jeans. Ideal. Brad gave me a pocket knife with 2 blades, a corkscrew, and a bottle opener. It was just the thing I needed. Ma's present was in the largest box and was the hardest to unwrap. 2! I exclaimed as soon as I had got into its innards, for there was a smaller package inside the first. First, I opened the larger one, a pair of shoes, tan-colored slip-ons, very light indeed, but well done. I tried them on. They slipped on easily. I walked in them. They were as comfortable as slippers. The next present, and what a surprise! It wasn't even for me. It was for father. An ivory-handled razor. All that the sticker said was from all of us. What does she mean from all of us? Father fumed, getting up. Not from Jake, sir. She doesn't mean that. Then who? From her father and Arlene and Brad, but mostly from her. Her? He said, incredulous yet believing. Don't be ridiculous, Remy. How from her? It says from all of us. Can't you see that that was the only way she could have said it? Hide something to give me as if I am a beggar? Father, I said, can't you see she couldn't have let Jake know? For peace sake? He was listening to me. It means she still loves you, Father. Love? Me? He spread the words as if his purpose was to alienate them. I nodded. Well, I have news for her, he said, sitting down again. Although he took up the present which he had got from me, he continued to stare at the razor. So she wants me to slit my throat, does she? He said finally. I was almost exasperated, but I laughed at his folly. No, father. You should have seen her. She was so happy to see me. She even asked about you. What? Oh, how you were getting on, that's all. I'm fine. Did you tell her that? Of course, I told her that. Yet, with all his snapping and belligerence, I knew he was deeply moved. Above the crackling of Christmas paper, he said, Has she had her baby yet? No, sir, but it will be soon. He amazed me. I hadn't known that he would be capable of asking that. It must have taken strength for him to have asked that. When he finally unwrapped my present to him, he broke out of himself once more, oohing and eyeing over the pajamas which I had given him. Like it? It's just perfect, he said happily, patting me on the shoulder. His present to me was a wristwatch. Oh boy, 18 jewels and such a smooth ticker. Max knew he was being left out of something of great importance, so he barked a couple of times and I remembered. I put his present around his neck, a collar which I had bought him. Maybe he would grow fond of it, but just then he was trying very hard to dislodge it with his front paws. Then we opened the Hilchers' presents to us. About noon we were to have Christmas dinner at their house. Betty had insisted. Men are not to fuss with Christmas cooking. It isn't right, unless you do mind eating at our home. Who minded? Not me, and not father either. We would be there, but just the same, I couldn't wait. It was a long time between then and noon, so I sauntered over. Protocol, you see. I had to say Merry Christmas. And what a dinner! A turkey-sized rooster had been cut up and cooked in the best of the Hilcher tradition, and there was good salad with it. And for the adults, a bottle of white wine, and for Donna Ray and me, the good old sorrel drink, a blood red business which was poured atop bicarbonate of soda to make it rush to the rim of the glass with a head of foam that fizzed like crazy. Man, that was dining. I'll clear the other 3 acres on the hill, Betty, father was saying. The yams turned out so well that I feel like planting all Jamaica on the yams. Land, 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 he declared dramatically. Give me land. I have land, son. He looked up at her. What did you say? I have land, 17 acres. But, but, he was spreading his hands. I can't. I haven't got the kind of money. Who's talking of money? That land's not for sale either, son. It's Donna Ray's when I die. John's last will and testament. But you may lease it. What's the use of letting it lie there wasting like that? Anyway, smart woman, I thought. Yes, what was the use? My God, father said, getting up and walking over to the window and looking at the land of which she spoke, crinkling his eyes against the sun. He turned swiftly. You mean that, Betty? Of course I do, she said coyly. Of course, son. He came over and he did it slowly. He took her hands in his. He lifted her chin and their faces were close, but he did not kiss her. I was sorry that Donna Ray and I were present. Father might have kissed her, but he was looking farther too. His destination lay in the village. Jack Gregson and I been talking, he said. He's meaning to sell me his land up there on the road, if I want to buy it. Yes, said Mrs. Hilcher almost rapturously. Uh-huh. Right adjacent to the square. It would put me side by side with Jake. Narrow frontage but deep. The roadside for a store, the mound for a house. Wouldn't it be something, Betty? Betty knew, but she didn't say anything. A smile often says the same things a word can, sometimes even better. Between then and New Year's Day, We had some visitors, Arlene and Brad. They stayed more than half a day, and Father and I hosted them grandly. I led them into all the secrets of living so close to the bush, and I bet that when they went, they were amazed at their discovery that there was so much country fun to be had right there in the village. They had lunch with us, but their visit wasn't unusual. It was their right and duty to be there, their blood obligation. The visitor who surprised Father and me was Rev Ledbetter. It was his first visit to River Bottom since we had got there anyway. He was a wiry man, balding, and his face was lined heavily with the crosses of other spiritual baldness. He smelt of whiskey. During Christmas, he never had it better, going from one of his parishioners to the others, eating of the best and drinking too. Greetings, greetings, he said. The Lord be with you. Season's greetings, Father said, shaking his hand. I said it too. I gave him a chair and he sat down. He said he was so happy at the news of Father that after the blow, he had not fallen into drunken dissipation, as most weak men surely would have. He said the Lord was with Father. Father thanked him dryly. Then, quite abruptly, the Rev Ledbetter said, I shall be expecting you back into the fold soon, Brother Johnson. It was a good thing he wasn't looking just then, for Father gave him such a look. After all, he had not come when Father was down. He had come only when he was in his ascendancy again. Father said, Reverend Ledbetter, you can go to. He said all of it, but I won't repeat it, for though I felt the same as Father did, I didn't quite agree that one should send a parson to the very place he spends so many Sunday hours exhorting others not to end up in the devil's hometown. When he heard what Father said, he jumped to his feet. Brother Johnson, I'm surprised at you. Father repeated it, and he was even cooler this time. The Rev Ledbetter shook his head gravely and put on his deeply creased crowned hat. For the love of God, he said as he was leaving. He didn't say it to Father, he just said it. He didn't look back, but Father was right to have rebuffed him. When he was on his feet in the good old days of Robin Hill splendor, Rev Ledbetter came and went as if he were one of the family. He ate there frequently and he drank Scotch whiskey as though it was water, and he was such an amiable drinker. And let me add, a tough one. In those days, Father contributed heavily to the church, not in members' envelopes at service time, but in fat donations for such projects as repair work and expansion. In those days, we saw the good Reverend often, but not since the fall. He hadn't tried to offer any counseling when Ma's marriage to Father was breaking up. He dryly said, It's the Lord's will. The Lord give it, and the Lord take it away. The Rev Ledbetter would not return to River Bottom. We knew that.